Well, hello and welcome to this ClueCon Weekly. We're back in the ClueCon Weekly podcast studio, and this time I'm delighted to have Andrew Germano. Hi, Andrew. How are you doing?
Hello, great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you along, Andrew. And where are you calling into the podcast studio from?
I'm actually in Melbourne, Florida, in the U.S.
Right. That's an exciting place to be right now, isn't it?
Very exciting, for sure.
The heat of all the different things that are going on in one way or another.
Exactly.
So we're grateful for you taking time out to come and speak to us. And you're with BEC Technologies.
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here.
Or sorry, BEC, I should say. BEC Technologies.
Or we like to go by our rock star name, BEC. Also, that works.
Fair enough. And I wonder if you could start off by telling us a little bit about what BEC Technologies do, please.
Sure. BEC, we're a manufacturing company. We've been manufacturing for over 45 years. We've been in the internet router business for over 20 years, since the early internet technology, ISDN, which most people, I still don't know what that is. But we've been through all the generations of DSL, ADSL, VDSL, fiber, power line technology. And for over 10 years now, we've been involved in wireless, fixed wireless access, Internet of Things, even telematics, Wi-Fi on school buses or police, fire, ambulance connectivity. So certainly quite a large portfolio of wireless internet and wired internet broadband technologies.
Right. Okay. So when you say ISDN, you mean back in the day when people were using ISDN for internet access?
I don't think anybody ever actually used it for internet access, but that was the dream, to have data over voice. I remember an early project, 35 years ago, where it was before ISDN was actually data over voice. I ran a pilot project at the University of Kentucky for GTE, which is now part of Verizon. But certainly data has been a long-time dream in the industry. And I moved to Florida, Cocoa Beach area 20 years ago to do 1 megabit over the air. That was a dream. And we're talking about a product today that's a multi-gigabit product with our new 5G offering.
Oh, amazing. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. I remember in the UK, we had ISDN 30 and ISDN 2, 30 obviously being 30 voice bearers and 2 being 2. And they did do the internet over the ISDN 2 by combining the 2 lines that you got, or the 2 slots, I should say, time slots, and giving you a whopping 256. No, it wasn't. It was 128K, because it was 2 lots of 64-bit voice channels used for data. So it wasn't exactly blinding. Although at the time that was a high data rate back in the day.
Oh yeah, you probably didn't have more than a megabit on your computer hard drive anyway at that point in time.
Yeah, indeed. But the thing was, in the UK, they never did voice with it, so you had to commit it to voice. Commit it to data. You couldn't have any voice with it at all. Of course, they managed to integrate, in terms of ADSL and VDSL, but not with the ISDN. It was a bit of a crazy situation.
How far we've come from sending little ones and zeros and alphanumerics to artificial intelligence and basically controlling. They're talking about remote operations. I'm not signing up for one of those yet, but certainly I'll play a video game.
Right, indeed. So now you mentioned you've been doing routers. What are you based on? Any kind of Linux firmware, or did you create your own proprietary firmware for these kind of things?
Yeah, so we've been in the industry, for a long time with these routers. Like I said, over 20 years. So we are Linux based with all of our router technology.
Right, I'm with you. And what about OpenWRT? Has that ever been part of your picture?
We actually control all of our own code, so a little bit different than some of our competitors. We have, there's a plus and minus. I mean, certainly there's a lot of benefits for open source. For us, the benefit is that we have full control. So, a lot of times customers will come and ask for new features, especially in the area of security or VPN or things like that. So it's a little bit easier for us to be able to get all the way down into the code, the bits and bytes, as opposed to looking for the right module. But certainly there's a balance there. I mean, I've seen a lot of really nice open source based products on the market as well.
Yeah, indeed. There's a good mix out there. And I know that some routers actually ship with OpenWRT on them these days, don't they? It used to be that people would buy them with the proprietary stuff and blow it off and put whatever they wanted on. and then some of the manufacturers started actually shipping with it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, things like Raspberry Pi, or even for us, we have a industry-leading remote cloud manager. So all of our CPEs can be remotely managed with our cloud, and so we tend to use a lot of standard interfaces, standard protocols, compressed so that you're not with a wireless data channel. It's a precious resource, so you can't just have a very fat pipe of overhead data that doesn't necessarily contribute to the customer's data. So we've done a lot of things with our remote management system to get a really rich experience of what's going on the edge of the network with the customer premise equipment, while having a very efficient interface using these industry standard type of open source modules.
Right. I see. And do your routing products, do you have like a sweet spot in the market that you aim for, or are they very generic devices?
Well, a lot of times, yeah, it's more of a gateway type device. So even with our telematics product, there's a lot of functions people like to have, and you get very specific. It's an industry that's been around for a long time, and then different aspects of the industry evolve over time. But with our products, we're really more of a gateway type device, where certainly like the value add is on the router sides, where we support the parental controls, the firewalls, the VPNs, a lot of the security mechanisms. But everything that we do is mainly industry standard based, whether it's Wi-Fi or LTE or 5G or even the VoIP or VoLTE, voice over LTE. We'll follow the industry standards for all those types of technologies, and then the over-the-top applications have a much easier path to run because everything is industry standard. So when we come out with a new product, we'll do interop testing with some of the leading upstream suppliers, like say Ericsson, Nokia, who's ever providing the radio access network. And a lot of times, we just turn it on and it works because everybody's following the standard. So it makes it a lot easier than say trying to interface with somebody who's non-standard equipment.
Right. I'm with you. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about where VoIP and VoLTE, or voice over LTE, or video over LTE even these days, comes into what you're doing.
Sure. I mean, it's really an evolution of the standard. So, back in 3G timeframe, we had circuit switch data, but now a lot of the major mobile operators are turning off the 3G to make more room for their 4G. So everything's all data. So there's really no concept of circuit switch, which is what our copper and our voice-based networks were, all those years before mobility really took over the world with voice. And so there's really the funny thing is voice is a killer application, but there's really no concept of voice anymore because voice is data. So everything's and it's with VoLTE, it's really just a way to do voice without having the circuit switch component. So everything is basically data traffic, data transmission, and it's a really nice, efficient coding scheme. So compared to some of the coding schemes, we're extremely efficient in 3G timeframe, where it didn't really require a lot of data. So VoLTE took a long time to roll out in the network because two main reasons really. Quality had to be there. And I remember back in the day when Sprint first started operating at the beginning of my career, 35 years ago, you could hear a pin drop, and you really could there was a time when the wireline network was really just the quality standard for voice communications. But I think over time, like up around 3G, I felt like mobile really had a better voice quality perception than say even the wired network as it started to go to a VoIP and more of a data transmission. So there's a real balance between how much data you use, the quality level, and then it's so much more efficient of a technology. And then obviously wireless being a precious resource, you can't just throw all the bits and bytes to have that full HD voice on there, but the goal is to have it sound as close to HD quality as possible with balancing the use of data. And so that's really where a lot of the effort has been over the last few years, and we're there. I mean, pretty much a few years ago it was rolling out very slowly, kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed a couple of years. Now it's pretty much rolled out in the national networks, and most of the regional networks are also have implemented or in the process of finalizing their implementation.
Right. I see. Okay. And you mentioned 5G, and you've got 5G products and as well. How do you see that increase in baseband data that's happened, and now the effective mechanism for handling that RF levels? or not RF levels, but in across radio frequency links. How do you see that impacting your products?
Yeah, it's a really fun time in the industry for me because we're in the sweet spot, right in the crosshairs of the biggest evolution, revolution, and growth opportunities. So BEC has been involved in fixed wireless for a long time, and I would say the enterprise data, for enterprise routers, probably 10 times bigger market than say residential fixed wireless broadband market. There's still a lot of fiber to the home, but now with 5G, I mean, there's a huge growth in this fixed wireless broadband market. So we have a front row seat for this opportunity. We're involved in a lot of the early networks. There's just a huge growth right now due to, unfortunately, the global pandemic, where a lot of people are working from home and they're not going into the office. All those office-based resources that have been installed over the past decade and decades are basically fallow, not being used. And then you have people needing more bandwidth at home. Also, a desire from companies to not mix private with corporate traffic, personal traffic with the corporate traffic. So having separate networks, and then an overlay on top of that, if that wasn't enough, is all the virtual learning, school from home. So we have a whole another set of private networks being put in place by the independent school districts to allow broadband access to everybody, not just to affluent homes, but for a lot of neighborhoods that may have been broadband challenged, to make sure that children have access to their schoolwork. So we're just seeing a huge increase in fixed wireless and a tremendous growth in private network deployments as well.
Right. Okay. And 5G is enabling that huge increase in the required data rates.
We're at the beginning of 5G, so 5G has been around for a couple of years already, but it's been in a low power mode, so it's more of a MiFi type of a device, something that you take with you, and it works where it works. But maybe in building you don't get that penetration that you would with say a larger or higher power type of a device. So what we're on the verge of seeing right now, and we've been doing field trials and are ramping up in the first quarter of this coming year, is fixed wireless with 5G. So what we're seeing is millimeter wave, of course, but we see millimeter wave more of the urban technology due to the lower propagation, at the higher frequency. But there's a lot of what they call sub-6 gigahertz 5G rollouts. So our new product is, it's always like battle of the bands. How many different frequency bands can you support from one product, from one antenna? So we've got 5G all the way from 600 megahertz, 700 megahertz, 800, 1900, 900, 2.1, 2.5, and then now the new 365, as well as the millimeter wave bands, 24 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz. So it's really interesting. Right. So the carrier aggregation is what makes 5G so much faster than 4G. I mean, if you look at a bit by bit, if I give each technology the same amount of spectrum, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 20 megahertz, you're going to get maybe a 10%, maybe 20% improvement with 5G over 4G. But the cool thing about 5G is you can throw 400 megahertz at it. So it's just having so much more frequency, even if it's a little bit better bits per hertz, lower latency, more connections. So we're certainly, I think the killer application, or the now application, is fixed wireless. We'll see as networks get more dense and roll out, we'll see a lot more Internet of Things. And then, eventually we'll see the corporate applications. And we're starting to already see demand for better in-building coverage using these mid-band and high-band frequencies. But like I said, with the pandemic and people working from home, some of the corporate projects are a little bit retarded, while the residential projects are in full swing, or triplicate of what they were, say, a year ago.
Right. And so you've given us sort of a relative comparison between 4G and 5G data rates, but are you able to put some kind of hard numbers on that? The kind of real numbers in terms of how much you could get out of a 4G network versus how much you might be able to get out of a 5G on some of these higher frequencies? Sure.
So earlier this year, we just introduced our first gigabit LTE router. So it's based on the third generation of LTE or 4G technology. It's LTE. It had LTE, then LTE Advanced, and LTE Advanced Pro. So we have what's called a Category 18 router, which is LTE Advanced Pro, and that technology will do 1.2 gigabits. That's available in the market. It supports all the frequencies: 600, 700, 1900, 900, 800. etc.
And is
All the even
Andrew,
to,
sorry, can I just ask? And is that symmetrical, or are you talking about the download only?
yeah, that's the download. Yeah, certainly the upload is not it's not symmetrical. It's TDD technology, so it's up and down in the same frequency. But generally, you're going to get less. Like I know at the LTE, what we're shipping before was maybe 300 down and 150 up. And then
Right.
it's
Oh,
just
so
a
it's
matter of how much
still very
frequency you want
respectable.
to dedicate to your uplink, and then also just the power level. The power level that you're able to transmit from a base station, down a tower site down is going to be a lot higher than what you can transmit from a residence up to that tower. So you're just not going to get the same uplink performance as you will the downlink.
Right. So you're talking about 1.2 gigahertz bits potentially on 4G. What's that going to go up to in 5G?
Yes, we've got a new product that's coming out now. Like I said, we're in testing, field testing right now, and we'll ramp up early in the new year. That product is theoretically capable of about 3 gigabits, so we're going to triple the potential speed, and it supports millimeter wave, mid-band, and low-band spectrum, and a lot more carrier aggregation. So right now the LTE Advanced Pro, category 18, it's based on GSM release 13, and then that top end, I think you can maybe do 100 megahertz aggregation. Whereas with the new product, the category 20 product supports 5G. That will allow you to do the full 400 megahertz aggregation. So you're just going to get 3 times the data. So 300 megabits. 3 gigabits down versus 1.2 gigabits downlink.
That is amazing to think
Yeah,
of that.
it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I want one
Yeah,
now.
it's mind
Yeah, the new
blowing. That's
iPhone
right.
supports the 5G, so everybody's excited about that.
Right, very cool. Now I know that you have been many IT expos and spoken at these events. What kind of things do you generally speak about at an IT expo, Andrew?
IT Expo is an enterprise show, so one of the big killer applications we've seen for the past years is what we call wireline backup. So most enterprise will have a wired circuit, whether it's fiber, coming in. So there's a lot of things that happen from tornadoes to hurricanes to power outages. So we've been using wireless as a backup to wireline. Certainly, there's cord cutters where you can just go wireless all the time. But the reason why a lot of businesses don't is just because it's a meter technology. You pay per megabit or pay per gigabit, and so certainly the plans are getting larger, and unlimited is becoming more common. But it's really unlimited to a point. There's always a little fine print that says throttling will occur if you use more than so many gigabits. Whereas wired is viewed to be a bit faster as well as unlimited. So, but wireless as a backup to wireline is a great insurance policy. I mean, it triples your reliability, and then it's like if you're a retail shop or a police station or a school or a bank where you can't afford to have your connection down at any point in time. We all know there's power outages. We all know there's hurricanes and tornadoes, natural events, disasters, snowstorms, floods, and these circuits go down. They could go down for minutes, hours, days, weeks. We've done a white paper that shows, you can get it from our website at bectechnologies.net, that shows there's billions of dollars lost per year with these little outages. But if you couple the wired circuit with a wireless circuit, you now have a huge reliability increase. Anybody that's been through a disaster knows that a lot of times if your phone service go down or your power goes out, it could go out for quite some time, whereas the mobile phone, as long as you have your battery charged, is usually still up and running.
Right. I have a sort of bit of a detailed question on that, because of course a lot of ClueCon weekly viewers will be running voice services in SIP, and these are very often authenticated on IP addresses. So when you go across to the backup line over the wireless technology, obviously your IP address is going to change. Do mobile or do wireless providers give fixed IP addresses in the world of wireless connectivity, or do you not know what IP address you're going to get when you flick over to it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Dan. A little bit more technical, detailed type question, but certainly a consideration as you're deploying, best practices for these networks. So there's actually both Some wireless operators prefer for enterprise to have static IP. They'll charge more for that to have a fixed IP, whereas others are more dynamic. And there's some security implications between both of having private IP versus public IP. So certainly that's a consideration as well. And then the mobile network does support what they call mobile IP. That's a technology standard that's come out years ago, where you have the ability to maintain a voice call through a transition, even if you have to switch the IP address or switch to another circuit. So that's also a critical consideration. So the way that you deploy these backup circuits is you have to have a way to hold the call through the transition. So you don't want to be in the middle of an important call and then drop that. Now for data on internet, it's usually viewed as that's self-restorative. So if you're in the middle of a browsing session and you switch from one IP to another, you might not even notice it at all. I mean, it could slow down for a second, but even if you're doing a file transfer, it's going to pick up where it left off, pick up where it left off. But it's just if you have something that's a live interaction, like a voice call, you don't want to drop that, or even have like, oh, excuse me, what did you say? You have a little bit of a noise impression there. But yeah, the technology's there to provide that connection through transition.
Right, that's very clever, being able to hold up a call, when there's an outage during mid-call. Very, very clever indeed. That's great. Okay, and so you talked about giving that to the audience at IT Expo, and helping them with that kind of fault tolerance, if you like, in their systems. Is there any other messages that you bring to that audience in IT Expo?
Well, yeah, sure. The Internet of Things is really set to explode. I mean, we've got some really cool applications that came out this year as there's a much more focus on industrial type applications. Like think of Amazon. I mean, they're basically taking over the world. The whole concept of brick and mortar and shopping, the whole concept of shipping. I've heard from a lot of people that shipping, their eBay has become a lot more expensive for them. But when I order something from Amazon, it's free shipping. And it arrives from the postal service, the government postal service, even on a Sunday, which is mind blowing for somebody who's been around as long as I have to actually get mail delivery on a Sunday, and it's almost next day. I mean, I've ordered a few things during this pandemic. I'm not necessarily out in the shopping mall or anything, and it's just amazing how fast things are coming. So looking at automating those factories, that's just one example where in order to make things happen so quickly. I mean, I'm not talking about drone delivery, but that's next. Maybe that's late 5G or 6G. We'll have some drone delivery, which is a whole scary concept for me. But certainly the Internet of Things. So I have a customer who's actually doing robotic inventory. So they're actually have these robots that continuously roving around the big box stores at night, just collecting all the inventory, checking the shelves, and reporting back in. And those are all hyper connected over IoT devices that BEC manufacturers. So we're just seeing a ton of applications, even security cameras. And with all the things going on in the world today, there's just a lot more, CCTV is watching you, or a lot more video in the world. And some of the frequencies, the license frequencies that we're using, mobility from our cars, the operators don't want to use those to congest the network with video, which can take up a lot of bandwidth. But some of these newer frequencies, like mid-band, that are shared frequencies, very low relative auction price, are perfect for backhauling, security cameras in parking garages, municipalities, airports, private networks. So there's just so many new applications that are being enabled by this higher bandwidth capability.
Right, that's a lot of things to think about in there. A lot of things that are on the change. And in terms of any processing, it sounds like you're in the business of sort of conveying data, whether that's over wireless or over fixed. Do you do any processing of that data, and have you had to involve AI at all in your products?
Not yet. I mean, a lot of folks like to have a sandbox type product. The BEC products generally don't have a sandbox where you can build your own code or maybe add some of the things like a Raspberry Pi, but certainly connect something like that to one of our Gig Ethernet ports or USB ports that we have, and then add the intelligence yourself with an external device. That keeps our device more secure and more robust, and solves a lot of potential support issues. But we're seeing just a ton of applications, even wind farms. I mean, think of all the data that's generated by those windmills out there, and they want to process that and send it back to a central location. So we don't actually do the processing. We're just the gateway that the data is collected locally. There could be other sensors but everything feeds into these generic or standardized interfaces on our box, Ethernet or
Right.
USB or LTE, Wi-Fi, and then they just get forwarded on to the internet, to the cloud. Now, where there's an exception to that is we do have our own management interface, so our devices are all manageable. So we have a really nice management system where you can see real time. You can load new firmware. You can reset a device. You can get an alert if somebody changes the IP address, or if there's a condition where it's switched over from wireline to wireless backup. When it switches
Right.
back, how much data was used. So we certainly have a ton of data that we're collecting and making available through a nice user interface on our own devices. But we traditionally don't do the over-the-top applications ourselves. We have partners that do that, or other OTT companies that provide that quite well.
Right, right. I'm with you. And you've kind of prompted the last question there in some of the things that you said, because I'd like to kind of round off in terms of my questions by asking about security in the world of SIP that a lot of us operate in, which of course is application layer. Security is a very fierce thing. There's many bad guys in the world who are trying to jump on SIP systems and use them ruthlessly. But you're at that more generic carrying kind of layer. How has the world changed for you in terms of security over the last few years?
Yeah, that's interesting. So you can never declare victory on security. It's an evolving beast. So if you ever think, oh yeah, we've got it, we've solved security, then you're in for a really rude awakening. So for us, we support the encryption, the security standards, and then we constantly get asked for new security mechanisms to be added. So what we tend to do is we're a manufacturing company, so we focus on supporting the baseline infrastructure of those evolving security standards, whether it's AEP encryption or some of the other types of security you might have on a device such as ours. And then it's constantly evolving. We're constantly adding new. Same thing with our cloud manager. We have the ability to remotely manage, reset, create backups, restore backups, and then also download through either direct to an individual unit or through a scheduler to a network of units, any kind of upgrades. And yeah, I would say there's usually maybe 1 to 2 security upgrades that you might want to have per year, just to keep up with these the black hackers that are out there, that black hat types that are constantly trying to figure out a way in, whether it's through denial of service attacks or just any kind of evil. There's always like the good and the evil out there, kind of like a cartoon movie, right?
Yeah, indeed. No, I totally agree. There's no room for complacence. You can't sit back. You've got to be kind of on your toes or on the edge of your seat at all times. Well, Andrew, thank you for coming in and talking to us. I'd like to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to mention regarding BEC Technologies or the technologies that you work with before we close the interview today?
Wow, it's been a great talk. I think we've covered quite a bit. We've got indoor units, outdoor units. We've got a ton of experience. We've been doing this for a long time. Our outdoor units are deployed in Alaska, cold weather climates, Wisconsin, West Texas desert, even in the Amazon rainforest. So it's really the right tool for the right job. You can't just say, oh, I need this router. You might need an indoor unit, an outdoor unit, an IoT type unit. And that's one of the nice things about BEC is that we do have a wide range of devices to choose from. So you're not just stuck with, the square peg for the round hole. You really have a nice selection.
And presumably all of these things are under like a common interface, insofar that once somebody's learned to use that, and I'm guessing it's going to be reasonably intuitive, but the user interface extends across the range of devices.
Exactly. And that's really nice. Same thing with the cloud manager. It's the same look and feel across all the devices, even though there's different form factors for, telematics versus IoT versus, broadband, residential broadband. The other thing I was going to say is, we're not really the most expensive guy out there, but we're also not the cheapest guy. But on the cheap side, a lot of times you get what you pay for. And the key thing to look out for there is we base our company on quality, reliability, and support. So the quality is really important, and the reliability, because the cost of a truck roll or an unhappy customer is really more than the cost of the equipment itself. You have to make sure you have something that really is going to last out there. We just got our MTBF numbers back on our outdoor unit. It's close to 30 years. So that's a really nice statistic. You know, we've replaced a lot of competitors' products where somebody's gone out and made a mistake because they're always squeezing me. They're always trying to get the cheapest thing out there. But the other big thing that people love about BEC though is the support that they get from us. We have a full support team, and we'll work, you know, tirelessly to solve any kind of these technical issues, interface issues, and we train our guys not just on the BEC equipment but also on the upstream equipment, so that, you know, we can figure out, you know, whether it's a SIM card or a network side or, you know, LTE 5G. So I think those are some of the things to look out for when you're looking for a product like this. Is make sure you understand the reliability, the quality, and then also the support and, you know, longevity as well. You don't want to pick somebody that's not going to be around. We've been in the States for over 16 years. We've been manufacturing for over 45 years. So it's nice to know that, you know, if you need to call us next year, we'll still be here.
Yeah, those are all very important points, and kind of doubly so when you're providing people with voice video communication services, as a lot of our customers are, you know, or a lot of our ClueCon Weekly viewers are. They've set up SIP services or WebRTC services, and of course connectivity to that is key. And so reliability and support as you're doing implementations is excellent. So thank you for making those points. Very valid points indeed, Andrew. And thank you for coming along on the ClueCon Weekly podcast. We're grateful to have you, and I hope to see you at some real life show in real life Florida, maybe in the not too distant future. I know that IT Expo have rescheduled
an email today from IT Expo saying it's on for January. So hopefully we'll see you in sunny Florida in January. And thank you for having me today, David. And thank you so much for your time. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, just one quick thing there, Andrew. I believe they've rescheduled it to June, haven't they? The IT Expo show.
Okay. Well, that's even better then, right? We'll all be healthy and wealthy and wise by then.
Indeed. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for coming along. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Good day.
And a good day to you.